marriage, so I can't remember where it started. But before that time, weddings were like, the more high status you were, the bigger a party you had for the wedding. But weddings, kind of generally speaking, were not as much of a glamorous affair as they are now. It would, for most people who weren't super high class, like upper nobility people, it would be like a relatively modest affair. You'd wear a nice dress, maybe you'd have a new dress made for it if you could afford it. But it was, pretty much a legal thing. You'd get your families together, you'd have a nice dinner, you'd consummate the marriage. That was kind of it. But the wedding of Queen Victoria was such a huge public event. And she did a bunch of new things, including wearing a white wedding dress, which suddenly became all the rage and has been all the rage ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Carrying a bouquet of flowers and having like themed flower arrangements around the whole proceedings. That had not been done before. I think that people used to carry flowers primarily so that if they stank, you wouldn't smell them. And now it's like, for a wedding, you must have giant bouquets. They all must match. They all must match what's on the table afterward and at the reception. Like, that was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think even having a cake instead of just a feast with whatever you want to eat became a thing at Victoria and Albert's wedding. And I found all of that really interesting because it was my understanding that all of those things went back way farther, like medieval times, but they're actually relatively recent.
Mm-hmm.
But they're now, I think the reason that I thought that they went back so much farther is because they are so completely a part of the script. Like, you cannot have a wedding without these things anymore. And so it just seems like, well, something that is that programmed into our understanding of a wedding must be like ancient. And it's totally not. It's like 150, 60 years old. Before that, people kind of did what they wanted. And just because Queen Victoria did it, now we all have to do it forever and ever. Amen. And it's so weird to me. It's totally arbitrary. It's made up.
Well, it is, but I think that there's certain things that those rituals you could date those rituals back even further, but specifically all at the same time, probably not. So like some of so like, for example, the white dress would represent purity. There's
Right.
many different wedding rituals throughout the world around white representing purity, and the whole thing about being pure before you consummate your marriage, like that would have been, I'm sure you could find reference somewhere historically of other places around that. Flowers, well, a lot of pagan ceremonies around hand fasting and like, celebrations, any kind of celebrations, there were flowers in the hair, right. Flowers,
fertility, right?
Fertility, like all that kind of stuff. So the flower piece would have been a part of any celebration, whether they matched. I don't think that was an important part, but the fact that there would definitely have been flowers at a ceremony. And probably the cake piece, I'm sure you could probably find some other like pagan rituals where there was a feeding of your partner.
Right.
Oh,
for sure. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, right. So I think probably those specific things probably weren't put together, but culturally and throughout time, they would have showed up in different rituals that would have just made it so that it would be an accumulation of those things. And maybe even might have even been because of going to other, royalty would have diplomats from all over the world. So there might be some, cultural stuff that was picked up by dignitaries or going to other weddings at other people's places being like, hey, I really like that ritual. Let's add that to ours.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that at all. Like how you could just kind of accumulate rituals that are fun. And, I, again, am not a huge proponent of marriage unless it's something that you want to do, but I will say that a wedding is a really good time. most weddings and receptions, you get cake, you get booze, you get food, you get to dance. It is a good time. And so I could totally see like being a diplomat and being like, hey, that looks like a fun thing to do at a party. I'm gonna bring that back with me.
Exactly. So yeah. So that's really the gist, I would say, is that for all of us to really look at where are our programming.
Yeah. There's something about the way that you're kind of describing people seeing you differently, like seeing you as more trustworthy or less of a threat now. Although it has no bearing on the way that you're planning on actually living your life. It kind of gives me the feeling that like people are maybe accepting the idea of ethical non-monogamy being an important part of your life as like a phase. Like that, they're super relieved because now that you're married, they think, oh, she got it out of her system.
So here's some funny things about that, actually. So I had people say to me, oh, it's about time you settled down.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at them, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm planning on having an orgy on my wedding night. As soon as COVID's clear, that's my plan.
Awesome.
Like, nothing has changed in my world. Right? No, right? And it really, I found really fascinating because this idea that partnership, so we just talked about the rituals and the brainwashing around those rituals. We haven't talked about love, and we haven't talked about that
Right.
component of love. So even the idea of being in partnership as a settling, I find really fascinating, because the reality is that if I chose a partner who allows me to be more of who I am, not
Right.
less of who I am. Right? So settling would be like, my life was fabulous, and then, oh, I got to settle now, and I got to give it all up, and now I'm going to live the rest of my life miserable.
That is very much implied by the idea, yeah.
That's implied. That's what marriage is supposed to be. So like, why would I want to get married if I had to settle? Like, why
would somebody be happy for you?
Exactly. Why are you happy that I'm going to be miserable now?
That's really fucked up when you put it like that. I think though, like, this is me completely talking out of my ass, so I apologize in advance for anyone I'm about to offend. But like, sometimes I do think that there are certain people with certain personality types for whom, like, maybe they're just like tired all the time, and they do want to settle down because it sounds comfortable and easy, and that's legit. If that is what you want out of life, like, I have no judgment for that. That's great. You do you, make yourself as happy as you can. But I think for a lot of other people, myself included, that sounds terrible. I want to keep doing what I want to do, and the idea of settling for something less sounds like the opposite of what I want.
And so here's my counterpoint to that, around that, is that even if wanting to have partnership is an important part of your makeup, of your script, choosing the right partner that you don't give up who you are means that's the partner that you're actually going to spend the rest of your life with. If you choose monogamy and that's the path that you're choosing, then you want to choose somebody that you're really compatible with.
Yeah.
And if you're compatible, it's not a settling. You're not giving anything up. You're completely compatible. So there is no giving anything up.
Yeah.
But if you're giving something up for the idea of stability, it's not and I did stability in air quotes for everybody who can't see me, there is no stability in not having compatibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't exist. As somebody who sees couples and sees couples who are on the verge of divorce all the time, the reason that they are on the verge of divorce is because they were not compatible and they settled because that's what they were told that they needed to do. So settling is basically your death sentence of a relationship.
That is a very, very good point and a very good way of putting it too. I mean, and like getting a divorce, probably for most people, not the end of the world, happens all the time. But I think that key piece of advice of, if you are settling, if you are giving something up, that's an indication of incompatibility. Like there's this video that has been going around the internet recently of an interviewer who is interviewing Eartha Kitt. And he says something about like settling down and compromising for a man in your life. And she just starts laughing in his face. She's like, compromise? What are you talking about? And he was like, well, if you met the right man, don't you think that you would be willing to give up a few things to make that relationship work? And she laughs and she's like, no, why would I give up a part of myself for a man? No, I am looking for a man who loves me as much as I love myself.
Yeah.
And that has really stuck with me. Like just her complete incredulousness that somebody would expect her to compromise for the sake of a relationship. I would like goals. That's how I want to be.
Yeah. I remember when I was fighting to get my tubes tied, and the doctors were like, well, what if you find your dream man? And I started laughing at them and I looked at them and I'm like, okay, so I don't want babies. So my dream man, in order for him to be my dream man, would also not want babies.
Right.
And they were like, but what if you find your dream man and he wants babies? I'm like, and I'm looking at highly educated, this is a doctor standing in front of me. And a female doctor at that. So I got a female doctor standing in front of me, arguing with me that I might change my mind because I'm going to meet a dream man. And apparently, in order for them to be my dream man, I need to want to have babies. Otherwise, I can't find my dream man. And I'm like, I got this look on my face like, what is happening right now? Like, logically, I don't want babies. My dream man doesn't want babies. So let's take that out of the equation. I don't want any babies. My dream man won't want any babies. Nobody wants any babies.
Good point. And I mean, even if he's like slightly sub-dream man, he certainly would not want you to do something with your body that you fundamentally do not want to do. Like, if somebody demands that you do something with your body that you don't want to do, that is not a good relationship. Get the fuck out.
Yeah, definitely not dream material.
Right.
Definitely.
Nightmare material.
Nightmare material, not dream material. And so, yeah, so these ideas are deeply rooted in our systems around women's value, women's slavery, women's ownership, women's lack of independence, all of these pieces. And we have glorified them, we have romanticized them so that we hide the ugly truths of them and don't even realize that they're ugly truths because we've made them into this big, beautiful, romantic gesture that's supposed to be hidden under rainbows and singing birds and unicorns and white picket fences and all of those pieces. But at the end of the day, real love, unconditional love, and finding partner or partners in your life to have this unconditional love and acceptance means they love you unconditionally, period. Exactly